Okay, so this video is about triggers and us practicing dealing with our triggers in relationship. So this is common for myself and my mother, who just shared this with me, was having a trigger coming up in a relationship, and old pain, old hurt, childhood memories, all this crap starts to come up. It boils up, it's like, bleh, it explodes, or it goes inward. Like my mother may explode, I will push away. I'm like, oh, I'm hurt. My safety or my defense mechanism, my coping mechanism is to push people away because I don't want to hurt anybody. I'm very, very aware. Sometimes not all the time, but I can be very aware of how my emotions impact other people and how sometimes I feel like a hurricane. And so there's this belief that I feel like a burden, which is very fascinating because I'm able to actually work with my mom on this stuff about how she actually has a very similar belief that she had when she was a child. So even though I didn't have, say, the abusive situation that she may have went through, I still feel it. This stuff gets passed down. So triggers, when they come up, whether in relationship to family members or in a partnership or business or work, think of them like a roadmap. When triggers come up, they let us see these blind spots that we don't normally see. Things aren't going to come out unless we're in a certain situation or a scenario that brings them out. And these triggers they're kind of guiding us and telling us what's blocking us from either feeling love, being completely 100% ourselves, getting what we really want, feeling like we deserve what we really want, all that kind of stuff. So triggers are wonderful. So for example, like I want to go ahead and say for this imaginary partner, I send them a note and they don't acknowledge this note and I feel hurt. So that's a trigger. Me feeling hurt, it's not them hurting me, I'm feeling this way. So the first step is responsibility for what we're feeling, because a trigger can sometimes come out as like, I'm feeling hurt, now I'm going to lash out, or I'm going to defend myself, or this person made me feel this way. No. We feel how we feel. We have to take responsibility for that. And then the second part is like, oh, trigger's coming up. Oh, shit. Okay, trigger, what are you trying to tell me? It's like the check engine light on a car. It's blinking, it's wanting us to look at something. And sometimes we don't know 100% what it is, so we have to dive into it. Now, if a trigger's coming up in the middle of a conversation or a scenario or with somebody, I think one of the best things you can do is just take a break and separate. Unless you have really good communication skills, and you can develop this. You can create kind of a repertoire. You can create a little set of rules or agreements with somebody saying, hey, when a trigger comes up, can you point that out in me? Can you notice that I'm being aggressive or angry or that you're feeling hurt? And then maybe we can pause or talk about it. But if that language isn't there and a trigger's coming up, my rule is I don't want to act in fear or anger or overly emotional joy, because sometimes I will say yes to things I don't want to. So there's a couple of little rules that I guide myself with. So the trigger's coming up, I'm noticing anger, per se, or like resentment, or, oh, now I feel hurt. That's not fair. Like, fuck you. I need to take a step away, because maybe what comes afterwards, it's like this residual emotion comes up and it sits there for a while and it takes a little while to dissipate, but it can come up really quick. You're just like, oh shit, fuck you. And afterwards you're like, I didn't really mean fuck you. That was my hurt talking. Sorry. The damage is still done. It's like stabbing somebody. Those wounds may heal, but now there's scars and there needs to be extra care around them. So you may still blow up and snap and whatnot. We're human. When you get triggered, we react. One of the hardest things I've been working on is to not be reactive within my triggers, whether it's outward exploding or inward hurting myself, because that can be really, really challenging. It can be almost addictive, the way we either explode or hurt ourselves. So recognizing those triggers, giving ourselves some space, being like, hey, what's up? And a great way to figure out what's up, because our minds can go in this awful ruminating spiral. It just go blah, 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 fuck this person, or go fuck yourself, blah, 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 blah. Stepping outside of our thought. It's almost like sinking a little bit deeper into the sea of water, a little bit below that, into our bodies. How does it feel? Where is anger within me? And I'll close my eyes, give myself some space, even if it's like 5 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever, just give yourself a little extra space. That can do so much. It's like, okay, I'm feeling anger. Hey, anger, what's up? What does it feel like? Oh, you feel like a really hot parka that's kind of sticky and I don't like it. And oh, I'm noticing tension and tightness in my right shoulder blade. And a heaviness in my chest. Oh, and behind that anger, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And then I'm noticing a thought coming up of like, oh, not having this need met by somebody else. I'm noticing I don't feel worthy. And I mean, we can judge all the stuff that comes up. But the important thing is to like kind of give us some distance from that judgment. Give us some distance from that reaction and just practice allowing whatever it is to be there. So even if it is shame, even if it is like a desire to self-harm or to harm somebody else, allowing that to show up. And when we give ourselves space, say away from a person where we encounter this trigger, we're less likely to lash out and actually hurt somebody or hurt ourselves. Great thing too is you can put your hand over your heart while you feel this, or put your hand over the part in your body like your head or your back. Having this sense of touch is actually very comforting, and it creates this chemical release in our body, which is really freaking cool. Giving ourselves that touch that we need, that soothingness to activate, I think it's the sympathetic nervous system. I don't know, I'm guessing here, but there's science behind this. You just gotta look it up. Anyway, touching yourself, giving yourself soothing stuff like, hey, I'm feeling anger and that's okay. Hi, anger, can I allow you to be here? You're really trying to tell me something. There's something behind you. What is it? Oh, there's sadness. Allow it some space to be there. And if it gets to be too much, give yourself a break. That's the hardest thing. It's like for me, I'm all or nothing sometimes. And I'm working on finding the gray in between, little by little. I'm definitely better than I was. And I'm still working on it, you know? So it's reminding myself, hey, okay, it's not just like I hate everybody or I hate myself. There's other options there, even if I'm so used to seeing just one or the other. So this is my ramble. But to give yourself space to feel your trigger, to acknowledge what's going on, to explore, to bring in some curiosity, to bring soothingness to you. Like, we could be like, oh, I don't like that, I was angry. And we could beat ourselves up for it. Or it could be like, hey, I was angry and I don't like the way that I reacted. But it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm any less worthy of love. It doesn't mean I'm any less deserving of love. It doesn't mean that I deserve to be punished in any way. I'm human. And this is how I'm learning, is by practicing and screwing up and maybe saying things I don't want to, but acknowledging them and looking at it. I think that's one of the biggest things. It's not about the fuck-ups that we make. It's how we interact with it. And it's our perspective and it's our relationship to ourselves that really expands our horizons, that gives us this power and this freedom that I think most of us really, really long for, this intimacy and connection that maybe a lot of us push away because of fear of pain. Like, pain is inevitable. The suffering, though, the holding on to pain, exacerbating it and making it bigger, that's something we do have some control over. And the more that we practice shifting our perspective by giving ourselves just a little bit more time and a little bit more space and a little bit more pause, even if, say, you're in a work situation, going to the bathroom, locking the door, turning the water on so nobody hears you, and crying, or clapping your hands, or doing some sort of physical movement. Look up somatic work. You're telling your body that you actually have the capability and the capacity to handle all the emotions that come up in you. And that because what you're feeling is actually your responsibility, whether we want it or not, we then give ourselves that power, that control. Maybe not what we feel, and maybe sometimes not how we react, but how we view it, how we perceive it, how the relationship that we have with ourselves. We can beat ourselves up or we can love ourselves. We can blame somebody else, we could blame ourselves, or we can recognize that shame is happening. Shame is not always bad. Shame can be healthy in sense of, oh, I didn't like what I did, but it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. So there's my ramble. Triggers are a map to like what we might need to work on and how to be happier and have closer and more authentic and intimate interactions in this world, to get our needs met, to figure out what they actually are. I think we all grew up in societies, or most of us have, at least taught by Western American society, that we need to sacrifice, that life sucks, get used to it. A lot of these kind of arbitrary beliefs, and not everybody, of course, but that's kind of what I grew up with. And I'm slowly undoing that. And it's like, you know, you plant seeds, the roots growing really deep. Getting rid of some blackberry bushes can be very challenging. And sometimes you don't want to go in trying to rip it out with your bare hands. You want to go ahead and give it time and space and recognize, like, working on ourselves and maybe things that we don't like about ourselves or interactions. And it takes time and compassion and love and self-care and acknowledging our feelings and maybe sharing our shame so it doesn't get as big. That's a great one. You share it. You're like, okay, this is what I'm noticing I'm embarrassed or I feel shameful about. Shame usually wants us to hide it. When we do the opposite, fear, like, yeah, when we do the opposite, things grow. So it's like fear wants us to push away. Maybe we move forward. And maybe it's not perfect. It's all play. It's all acknowledgement. It's all just having some awareness and bringing curiosity and compassion and some softness to that awareness. Lets us have more resilience so that we can feel the heavy ass fucking feelings and handle the heavy ass shit that's going on in this world and what's coming up for us. So anyway, that's my ramble. I hope maybe this gives a little bit of insight or gives some ideas maybe for people dealing with triggers. That they're not all bad. That you're not bad. There's no such thing as good or bad. We just are. We're a bunch of molecules floating around in space. Some are more compact and others, and we vibrating at different frequencies. That's all we are. It's freaking cool. It's beautiful. So sometimes I like to look at myself like an alien. I'm like, whoa, this is existence. Weird. Oh, man, I don't gotta be on drugs, and this is fucking weird, man. Yeah. Anyway, this is my ramble. I'm gonna go on tangents, so I'm gonna pause here and stop here and recognize that I have a lot of feelings coming up within myself. And I guess I'm sharing this too, to have these as reminders. Because even though I have, like, these still old beliefs that are popping up that I'm actively working on changing, I gotta remind myself to have some compassion for them to still be here. It's okay. That's how we change. It doesn't just go away entirely. Sometimes it does. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. And that's okay. You're doing great. However you are in this world. Your highs, your lows. Maybe shit just hit the fan and it's like somebody spewed, like, cat diarrhea everywhere, and it's in your hair, it's stuck, like, yeah, that's a terrible image. But it's okay. We're still here. Even if it's really hard. I think acknowledging, fuck, this is really hard right now. Or just somebody else like, hey, that sounds really fucking hard. Instead of trying just to do a really quick fix. Having that space, having that pause. All right, now I'm just redundant. But anyways, that's my ramble. Okay, bye.